This is Elsa, our 2022 Chevrolet Bolt EV, 1LT trim level, and she's just had her second birthday. We've had our Chevy Bolt for 2 years now. The odometer currently reads 42,254 miles. There have been some changes in our life, and some of our viewers have mentioned that we have picked up our Tesla Model 3, which is now my daily driver. Rachel's daily driver is her Fiat 500e, but we have 3 adults living in our house, and this is now our son Dylan's daily driver, and we'll hear from him a little bit later in this video on some stuff. But a couple of weeks ago, as I knew that this second birthday was coming up, I put a post in the YouTube community post, I should have said it that way, asking you what questions you wanted to have us answer about our car. Now, this is going to be from our experience, not claiming to be experts on it, so we're going to tell you what's happened with us and what our opinions on it are so far. So I'm going to bring in Rachel. She's got my phone, and she's going to kind of read these questions off to us. All right, so what's our first question?
This question is from Tian 2002, and they say, can you survive with Bolt EUV if only charge at DC? I'm in the process of buying a house, so I don't have home charging option. I live in SoCal.
Now, as I remember from the community post, that question had a lot of interaction from a lot of other viewers, and I'm going to stick with what I would think, and a lot of it was said in those comments, but any EV should be able to survive for you using only DC fast charging if and but, and there's quite a few ifs and buts. First thing, the car has to be capable of DC fast charging. A Bolt EUV, every single one of them will be, so if you're set on that make and model, then you don't have to worry about the DC fast charging, but cars like your Fiat
500e cannot do it.
Not every one of the older Bolt EVs can. So make sure the car can DC fast charge, number one. Number two, you've got to make sure that there are DC fast chargers around you, and they're at locations that you don't mind stopping and spending 30 minutes to an hour at, however frequently you need to be there. You've got to make sure that your daily commute is low enough. Ideally, what you would want is a daily commute that you only have to charge the car up once a week if you're going with DC fast charging, but it's got to be nearby. So check PlugShare, check those charging networks and make sure that that plug's nearby. Number two, it's going to be healthier for the car if you can mix in level 2 charging, and go to a movie once a week. A lot of movie theaters are going to have Volta chargers in front of them. And
those are great. They're free for as long as you have it plugged in for less than 3 hours.
But you're going to need to see a movie, because at that level 2, it's going to take hours to charge if you're only doing it once a week.
Right.
Number 3, you said you're in the process of buying a house. So if this is only for a few months, then it's not going to be that big of a deal. But if you're in the process of buying a house like we were 10 years ago, we were in the process of buying a house for a couple of years, and at the end of that 2 years decided we're going to have to wait another 4 years. And then at the end of those 4 years, we decided, you know what, we're just going to stay where we're at. This house is going to be paid
It really kind of depends on what you mean by in process. Like if you've made an offer and it's been accepted and you're just like waiting for escrow, that's one thing. You can start looking into getting an actual juice box on the side of your house or something. If you're just sort of thinking about buying a house and haven't actually made the decision yet, you're probably going to want to make sure that you're good for a long term with the car that you buy.
And for that, you're going to want to make sure that there's chargers close by and there's stuff for you to do, because if it becomes every couple of days, I've got to sit for an hour at this EV Go or this Electrify America, it's going to wear on your nerves really quickly. And but if it's, hey, there's a charger at my grocery store, when I go do my grocery shopping once a week, I fill up my car while I'm in the store, you're not even going to notice that.
Yeah, that's completely not a problem. All right, you ready for the next one?
Yeah.
So this next question is from ABTF5FL, asking, now that you have the Model 3 to drive, I'd be interested to see how well the Bolt retains charge in its battery while sitting for 7 days straight, unplugged in a hot Texas summer. Measure the before and after state of the charge using car scanner and keep track of the temperatures. This would be a good simulation of what to expect when taking a Bolt to the airport for a medium-length plane trip. So far, my ownership experience is that the Bolt holds its charge pretty well while unplugged, but I've only tested it during mild temperatures. So I'm curious if the battery would see more drain during the 100-degree Texas heat.
So here's the deal. I tried to run this test and we had to find the right time frame to do it. And it's one of the reasons why this video got delayed a little bit. And the test wasn't as good of a test as I would have liked. So here's what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to dedicate an entire video coming up sometime in the next few weeks for that question with the OBD dongle. But here are the results of the test that I did do. As I mentioned in the intro, this is not an extra vehicle for us. This is someone's daily driver. It has to go places right now and it cannot sit for 7 days at a time. We found a point where we thought it could sit for 3 to 5 days. And
that did not work.
But here's what happened. I plugged the car in, got it up to its charge limit. The charge limit is set at 80% per recommendations in the owner's manual. And ever since the day that we bought it, the 80% charge limit really is 78%. So I will say it was at 78% of state of charge. The guessometer showed 191 miles of range. That was on a Friday evening. Saturday morning, I went out to the car. After it had been unplugged, it had dropped 3 miles to 188. I checked it Saturday evening, it still said 188. I checked it Sunday, it still said 188. Monday morning, I checked it, it still said 188. It lost those 3 miles of range overnight, but then didn't lose another one for the next couple of days. That evening, I reread the question and saw that the commenter said, check it with the dongle. And I said, oh, I should have thought of that. I'll plug the dongle in as soon as I get home. But in that time, the car had to go somewhere.
Oh.
And so the test was over and I didn't get a chance to plug the dongle in. From what I noticed, it hardly loses anything. That 3 miles immediately overnight was probably just computer calibration.
Yeah.
The other days sitting around, and it did get over 100 degrees, it did not lose it. That's because this car actually turns off. Our Tesla doesn't really turn off, it just goes to sleep.
Right.
And so there is more drain on the Tesla than there is on this car. We've had it sit for days on end when we've been on trips or whatever, and it's been fine. There were times we just weren't tracking it, that it may have lost 1 or 2% over 3 or 4 days.
But it was not noticeable.
Not noticeable.
Yeah.
It was 3 miles total over the 3 days I was able to check it, and I promise you I'll come up with a full-length test with the dongle and track all the data. I just need to find the time that's going to be best to do that.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that we don't have a garage or a carport, so the car was sitting baking in the sun that whole time, and we still didn't have a noticeable drop. Yeah. Here's one that I know you have a long answer to. Nice Guy YNY, it's Nice Guy NY, says, I also own a Bolt and would be curious as to your experience with the tires, specifically their lifetime compared to other cars' tires. Thanks for doing these videos. You're
Get
welcome.
comfortable. This is going to take a little bit. We were also going to make a separate video about this, but when that question popped up, it's like, you know what, I'll just give the long answer in this review video. We had a little bit of an adventure regarding tires a little over a month ago on this car. Now, it is 2 years old. Around, I'm going to say August. It was a year ago. It was right before we did the 1 year video. On my way to work, I ran over something on the freeway, I clipped it with the left front tire, and I immediately noticed the TPMS showing me a leak. I went to a tire shop and said, I need a patch on this tire. They took the tire off, pulled the nail out, and they said, I can't patch it, but I don't need to patch it. And that's when I discovered that the tire had this gel on the inside. These were self-sealing tires, the original factory tires. I thought, great. I shouldn't have thought great.
Famous last words.
I learned the hard way. Just because it self-seals doesn't mean you can assume it will always stay sealed. That seal lasted for us a good 10 months, but by the time we got to the end of June, I got a notification on my phone in the form of a text message from OnStar saying that a tire on the car was flat. Like flat.
He was out of town when that happened.
I was out of state when that happened.
Yeah.
I was in Indiana, the car was in Texas, and it was flat, like pancake flat,
Yeah.
no pressure.
Yeah.
Rachel and Dylan aired the tire up. was flat just a few minutes later.
Yeah, it was a big leak.
It was basically, we couldn't see any kind of nail. What we saw was that self-sealing gel that was coming out.
Yeah, you could feel it inside the tread of the tire.
So we aired the tire up full and got it to a shop nearby that I did not think this was possible, and they confirmed it. With the self-sealing tires with that gel, they cannot be patched. And this shop would not plug it either. So we decided maybe we'll just go get a tire. And tried to get it to a discount tire, which was about 18 miles away. That day, I was not able to get the car to go maybe 1.5 to 3 miles, depending on the speed I was traveling, before it got down about 15 PSI. And I knew I'd be on the road, so I only had the 12-volt air compressors. I brought our good one from the Tesla, which had enough pressure to fill it up, and I had another one that we keep with the Bolt. It couldn't keep up with the leak. I got 1.5 miles, had to fill the tire up. I got 2 miles, had to pull over into another parking lot and fill the tire up. Got another 3 miles up the road, and as it was getting full, my good air compressor died. I absolutely killed it. It was from overwork. Got another 3 miles up the road, had to pull over. My good air compressor's dead. The other 12-volt compressor I had with me didn't have enough power to keep up with the leak, and at that point, had to push the OnStar button and get a tow truck to come out and get the car. They promised me a flatbed on OnStar. OnStar called AAA. AAA sent me a wheel lift. We ended up getting the car towed to Discount Tire. I was sitting, they were slammed. We were sitting there for a good 3 hours. So that's the story. Here's the stats on what you wanted to have for your answer. The front tires at that time, well, all the tires on the car were the original factory tires, and it was just a couple hundred miles below 40,000 miles at the time. So that was a good 40,000, after about 40,000 miles of life. County roads, multiple road trips, a lot of highway. The front tires were down to 3/32 of an inch of tread left. The rears were at 5/32. At that, and we had tire rotations done, but at those tread depths, the fronts needed to be replaced. The rears we probably could have gotten another month or two out of. So we'd say right around 40,000 miles would be the time. We could have maybe pushed that to 45 if it wasn't for the hole in the left rear tire. I think that's about normal, but I'm not an expert on that, and I'll tell you why. Where we live, there's construction all the time. There are a lot of housing developments being built. There's a lot of road construction being built, and when you're not going by an area that's under construction, you're behind a truck that's that's hauling a lot of construction equipment. So our roads are just full of things that can puncture a tire. We've lived here for 23 years and had a lot of cars in the time that we've lived here in those 23 years, and I don't think we have ever had a car that we kept the tires on it for the life of the tire. We've always had to replace tires because of punctures in places that couldn't be repaired.
Yeah, there's always something.
So I don't have a benchmark. I don't have a baseline to compare it, just because our tires don't die natural deaths.
That's true. That's fair. I did want to mention, though, that tow truck was paid for by our OnStar membership.
Yes,
we didn't have to pay for that.
Didn't have to pay a penny. I asked the guy when he dropped the car off. He was a nice dude. Let me have a ride in the truck, which
they don't always do that.
It's probably expected, but drove me there. We had a nice conversation on the way there, and as he's pulling out, I say, "Hey, do I need to give you a credit card number or anything like that?" He says, "No, I think you're taken care of." And he called his dispatch and said, "No, they're paid for." Yeah. And that was great. All I had to do to get that help was push the OnStar button, and out they came. And that's probably, but yeah, I don't think it's anything out of the ordinary. You may have a completely different opinion that is 100% valid, but again, that's because I don't have the baseline of not knowing what a natural lifespan of tires are, because our tires just die young.
All right, well, that dovetails pretty nicely into the next question. Famous says, spare tire and jack, bike rack, dash camera, floor mats. Tell me about all the accessories.
All right. I haven't purchased many accessories for this car, but I will tell you about the ones that I have and answers to some of the ones about the ones that I don't. I highly recommend getting an adapter. that'll go from J1772 to Tesla, so you don't have to filter out Tesla destination chargers at hotels if you're on a trip. That little adapter will allow you to plug into a level 2 Tesla destination charger. I'm still hopeful that GM is going to send us the adapter where we can plug into a supercharger and fast charge at a Tesla supercharger, but
they have not done that
to
yet.
get the adapter into a destination charger, those do exist. I've reviewed a couple on my channel, and I'll put links down in the description and tag it up here somewhere. After the charger, let's see, we have a window shade because we don't want to kind of keep the car a little cooler.
We just bought that at
we just bought that at an O'Reilly.
Yeah.
Have an air compressor, a 12-volt air compressor in the car. Reference the last story. Get a good one.
Yes, get
at
the best
O'Reilly.
one you can afford.
Don't
It's
go for the
worth it.
cheapie. Get a good one. You need that extra power.
Yeah.
And let's just go straight to the floor mats.
Okay.
We still have the factory floor mats in the car. Have not purchased the all-weather floor mats, but we do have all-weather floor mats in our Model 3. And Rachel, you like those all-weather floor mats a lot
We
better.
love them, yes. The cloth floor mats, the carpet floor mats that come in the Bolt are fine, but they just are a lot harder to clean. When we try to clean our cars regularly, and when we go to the car wash with the vacuums, those floor mats just take a while. The ones that we bought for the Tesla that are rubber floor mats, those are so fast to clean. Love them. If you want to get those for your Bolt, it will be so much easier to clean. I recommend it.
And there are a lot of manufacturers that make them. I'm sure you could check Amazon. If you don't want to mess with checking Amazon, just go straight to WeatherTech. I promise you, they'll have them there, and those will be a good investment. Dash cam, the car does not have an onboard dash cam. We did review a very low cost yet high quality dash cam, at least in our opinion. The cost was low and the quality looked good enough for us. It was on par with the dash cams that are in our Model 3. I'll put the link down to that review in the video as well. There are other dash cams out there. Any aftermarket dash cam would work though. When we reviewed, full disclosure, when we reviewed that dash cam, we reviewed it in the Fiat because the Bolt wasn't available for us. So if you look at that video and you see it's not this car, that's why.
Yeah.
Bike rack, we don't have bicycles.
Yeah.
So I don't have any way I can't answer you on the bike rack. I know that you can go to etrailer.com and they have hitches available for this car that are specifically for the purpose of a bike rack. And then spare tire and jack, and this is what dovetailed into the last story. I've been meaning to do that for 2 years and I haven't. The information I've gathered on Bolt forums, if you don't want to just buy a new one off of Amazon or something like that, a low-cost way to do it is an old Chevy Cobalt. If you can find an old Chevy Cobalt at a salvage yard, the donut spare fits the Bolt, according to people who post on Bolt forums. And if it's got the spare and the junked out Cobalt, there's a good chance it's got the jack and the lug wrench and all of that. If it doesn't, find any car that's got a nice scissor jack that you can stick in there. It won't quite fit in the sub trunk, but there are other videos from other Bolt owners on YouTube where they've just pushed the foam in the back hatch area out of the way so they can fit it and have their floor be flat. I didn't really want to do that, and it's been something I've been meaning to do, but I haven't done. Sorry, but that's the information that I've received.
But the ride flat tires, I think, were put on there partly in an effort to make it so you don't actually need a spare. If that ride flat tire system works for you, if you get a puncture, you should be able to drive at least to the next destination so that you can get a new tire put on there. It's not really intended to make it so you never have to replace the tires, but it does make it so that you shouldn't need a spare tire.
And remember from our experience, those run flat tires, those self-sealing tires, they cannot be patched. So once they get a hole in it, its lifetime is definitely limited.
Yeah, it's time to start looking into getting new tires at that point. All right, the next question is from Infected Pie, cute name. They say, curious on interior exterior wear, new creaks and rattles you may have noticed, any infotainment system glitches?
So to answer the question about interior cracks and wear, I'll just show you. I'll run the camera through, show you the dashboard, show you the interior. The interior still looks new, in my opinion.
It still looks good. It's held up pretty well.
It still looks fine. I have yet to take off the little plastic film on the main screen. I thought, well, you know what? I can see through it just fine, and it makes for a really inexpensive screen protector. One of these days, I'm eventually going to have to peel that. As far as
Creaks and rattles
and
and
infotainment glitches, I can really only answer one of those part way because this has not been my daily driver for the last 6 months. So we're going to bring in Dylan to answer that because Dylan drives this car more on the regular.
Okay. All right, so the rest of that question from Infected Pie goes to Dylan. Tell us about new creaks and rattles you might have noticed and also any infotainment system glitches.
Well, first of all, I feel like it's common knowledge that the Bolt has a lot of road noise when traveling at high speeds. So if there are new creaks and rattles at high speeds, I'm not noticing them because I'm just hearing the road noise.
Fair point.
But it's very solid. It still feels like a new car to me. As far as the infotainment system, I think like any jank that you're going to run into comes from the fact that it's set up for profiles, which could confuse people who expect their car to act like a car and not a computer. But it's just like, you know, logging into Windows XP. I was the angelfish. It's just like that. Something that you should keep in mind. My fiance drives this car sometimes, and I have an iPhone, but he has an Android, and they connect to cars through two different like proprietary systems. On Apple, it's called Apple CarPlay, and on Android, it's Android Auto. And it seems to connect to Apple CarPlay much, much, much faster than Android Auto. And a lot of the time when it's connected to his phone, sometimes there will be like glitches and it'll disconnect and reconnect like while he's in the middle of driving, which is stressful when he's using it for GPS. But I'm not sure if that's because of the Android operating system or because he just has a cheap Android. But there aren't any cheap iPhones, so if you use an iPhone, you'll be fine.
All right, this next question is from Darker Brother. They say, have you towed your Teardrop Camper with it? Short answer?
No. We're at 42,000 miles now, so we're past the bumper-to-bumper factory warranty on it. But it's those big letters in the owner's manual that say, do not tow with this car, that made me very hesitant to attempt to put a trailer hitch on it.
Everybody says you can do it. It's legal in Europe, but in America, in the United States, it says don't do it. And, you know, who knows, it could void, you know, the insurance might not like it. There's all kinds of things that might happen just because they recommend that you not do that.
And then there's also the other side of that coin where we're in the middle of a project on doing some fix-up work on the Teardrop Camper as well.
We haven't used it this summer at all.
That we haven't finished that fix-up project with because we ran out of time.
Yeah.
We have it fixed enough to be weather-tight right now, but there's still some things like the hatch, and we've got to repack the bearings in the wheel, and there's a little bit, and we've got to do some interior work on it. But the Teardrop Camper is getting back out on the road, but now that, since this one especially isn't our daily and the Model 3 is, the hitch is going to go on our Model 3.
Sorry, those of you that enjoyed the Teardrop Camper content.
It's going to come back, but no, we have not. So there's the answer to that question.
Thanks for asking. Okay, the next question is from Anna Butt. Or Anna Abbott. Ann Abbott, that's probably it.
Although you could go with Ann Bot from now on, Anna Bot, if you wanted to.
You might be a bot, I don't know. But Ann Abbott says, this is my second summer with my Bolt. Last year, temps were seasonal. This year, we hit 100 plus, and I noticed a real hit to battery efficiency. Do you see the same? I get really good mileage, and it's over 95 degrees, until it's over 95 degrees.
Okay, so last year, I did multiple efficiency tests on this car. I've got videos up on all of those. I can confirm for you, in the heat, you are going to get a hit on your efficiency. and it's going to be substantial. The hit that you get on your efficiency is going to be from how much harder the air conditioner is working. And there might be a little bit of battery cooling in there as well. The car's got good thermal management on its battery, but it's primarily for cabin air conditioning that's going to drain your battery according to the battery report on the car.
I just want to point out that this is true for gas-powered vehicles as well. People don't usually pay close attention to their efficiency, but that is definitely the case for gas-powered vehicles as well.
You're not going to get as detailed of a graph as how much of your gasoline is going towards running your air conditioner because of what pull it's putting on the motor. Yeah. But the electric cars show you that. But while you're going to get a hit in the summer, you're going to get a bigger hit in the winter.
Yep.
With this car, the Chevy Bolt, an electric vehicle without a heat pump, it takes a big hit in the winter because it has to warm the battery up. The heater uses more electricity than the air conditioner does.
And compared to a gas-powered car, an internal combustion engine is already hot regularly, naturally, so you're going to get heat almost for free from an ICE vehicle, and the electric vehicles do have to work hard, and their electricity is not a very efficient way to heat. So yeah, in the winter it's going to be a much bigger deal.
The way that I countered that efficiency loss in the winter when this was my daily driver was using the heated seats, the heated steering wheel, keeping my jacket on, and if I had a beanie, I'd keep it on also, and just kind of stay bundled up, and that way my efficiency didn't take too much of a hit. But one of those efficiency videos, this car lifetime is right around 4 miles per kilowatt hour. There was one day I was driving home in a headwind, and it was 15 degrees Fahrenheit outside, which for Texas is really dang cold. So I had the heat on, and there were flurries, so I had the defroster going as well. And the efficiency went down to something like 2.7 miles per kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
That's the biggest hit in efficiency that I've ever had on this. We're going to go down around 3.5, 3.6 in the summer, maybe around 3.3 in the winter when it's not that cold. But where this car loves is between 50 degrees Fahrenheit and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. If you track your efficiency when the temperature's in that window, you're going to love your efficiency. It's going to be huge.
Plus, pro tip, if the temperature is extreme outside, either hot or cold, you can increase your driving efficiency by conditioning the cabin temperature while you're plugged in. So if you plug in at home, leave it plugged in while you allow the car to get to the temperature that you want it to be. And then when you unplug it, depending on how long your trip is, you may not need to use as much of your battery power to condition the temperature of the cabin.
The Bolt does have a remote start feature, and you can remote start it from the app as well, and you could remote start it from the watch. That was one of my favorite things in getting ready for work in the morning. I'm in the bedroom getting ready, put my watch on, hey, let's start the car and continue going. But yeah, definitely condition your cabin while you're plugged into shore power.
For sure. The next question comes from RP9674, and they say, anyone have problems with rodents under the hood? I leave my hood open at night to deter them.
So I've got the hood open right now. I will say that we have not, and I'll just put in the shot that I just took of the underside of the hood where the a lot of folks would say the engine would be. Our dog Fiona is a rat terrier. We even asked her to look, and she didn't find anything.
Nope.
We live on a prairie. We're in a rural area. We are in the country. Full disclosure, there are a lot of feral cats where we live.
True.
And so
And
the feral cats and the free roaming dogs kind of keep the rodent population down.
True.
So we haven't had that issue. That doesn't mean that issue doesn't exist with some EV owners, but it hasn't been a problem for us. Peter Gruntfest asks, how would you compare the ride between the Model 3 and the Bolt? Similar harshness, or is one noticeably smoother than the other? If you watched last week's video, you know that Rachel's Fiat was in the body shop for a couple of weeks, and she had to trade off between the Tesla and the Bolt depending on the day. So she's got the best experience. Rachel, go ahead and you take an answer on this one.
Well, I want to start by saying my daily driver is the Fiat. It is not a particularly smooth ride. It's a little, it's a little bouncy. It's got very firm steering, and it's you know, it's kind of a Tonka toy. It's cute, but it's not a super smooth ride. That said, comparatively, the Bolt and the Tesla were both extremely smooth, just a completely other league from the Fiat. Probably if I had to choose, I'd say like the Tesla's probably smoother. It has more sophistication to it, and it's a little bit, just has a more smooth kind of feel to it in general. The Bolt is also quite smooth though, and I do actually prefer the seats in the Bolt. So driving long distances, I find those seats a little bit more comfortable than the Tesla, but definitely the Bolt is not, it's not a bad ride at all. We've done a lot of road trips with it, and we like it.
And see, if I was going to say that, I would disagree and say that the Bolt would have the edge on the smoother ride. But that should tell you right now that we can have a differing opinion over the same exact cars that are in our family. That's how close it is.
Yeah.
I equate the Bolt, the Tesla's ride, to it being a little bit sportier or such.
Sure.
But I do agree that the seats in the Bolt are going to win on the comfort.
Yeah.
The last question comes from Eric's 3937 or Eric S 3937. Sorry if whichever one of those was wrong. I've noticed from different Bolt forums I frequent that the Bolt often serves as a starter EV of sorts for many. Do you plan to own yours long term? Rationale behind whatever your future plans are. Thanks. He edited that I have plans to keep my 2019 for many, many years because it serves my use case well, but we all have different needs. So we're all going to try to chime in on this.
I'm going to have Dylan answer that question first because he's the one that's been driving it and has some opinions on what it's like as a first EV vehicle.
I do think if it is your first EV, sorry, there's a dog. I think if it is your first EV that you can hold on to it for quite a long time. You guys started with the Fiat and felt the need to upgrade pretty quickly because it's just got short range.
And it can't fast charge.
And it can't fast charge.
The Fiat, that is.
But the Bolt, like I said before, is very similar in price to a Tesla Model 3. It's very similar in range to a Tesla Model 3. And the only downside is that you can't use the Tesla superchargers. But if you get a GM adapter, then you can. And depending on what kind of driver you are, you might find all the cool, sporty tech features of the Tesla more desirable, or you might find them less desirable and not want a bunch of cameras all over your car. If you're not interested in the Tesla, I think a Bolt is a great choice.
Especially if you like buttons.
Especially if you like buttons instead of touchscreens.
The Bolt has buttons. It's going to behave like a regular car. I want to address something. Loud truck. I want to address something about the price. A new Bolt and our used Tesla were very close in price. So it's not necessarily an apples to apples, but now used Bolts compared to used Model 3s, the Bolts are substantially, but they're close in the used market. So we were talking from our experience. Remember I said that at the beginning?
Right.
In our experience, the prices were very close. Let's talk about the buttons.
Well, something else to keep in mind is that the Bolt EV is not going to exist anymore.
Wait, it's supposed to come back next year, though.
It's supposed to come back next year?
Yeah,
I thought they were only bringing it back as the EUV.
Well, yeah, the Bolt, you are absolutely right. I stand corrected. I may go sit corrected over in the corner now. But you are correct. The EV's gone. It's the EUV that's coming back.
Yeah.
So if you prefer the EV, that's just what's there. But yeah, with the physical buttons that are in the car for the radio, for the climate control, all of that stuff, if it's the first electric vehicle that you've ever owned, it is going to feel like a regular internal combustion engine car when you sit down in it. It is not going to behave like one when you drive it.
Right. But, even a lot of ICE vehicles from the past, 8 years or so have a push button to start instead of a ignition key.
But it's going to have EV acceleration. Yeah. It has the ability for one pedal drive. And if you don't like that, the Bolt, you can turn it off. So it is a good transition car for someone who it's going to be their first EV. That is true in those Bolt forums. If you read that on there, you're absolutely correct. Now, what about our long-term plans?
There's one more thing I want to say when it comes to the one pedal drive, and it's that you can turn it off, but your range is going to take a hit. And I think that we should investigate that, have this car do the same drive with the one pedal on and then again with the one pedal off, and compare how much battery it used.
So we'll have that video coming up in a few weeks. Let's go on to the second part of the question about our long-term plans. What are we going to be doing with this car?
Right now, it is my daily driver, and for my long-term plans, I do plan on pursuing graduate school in New Mexico. So what I was concerned about with that is getting the Bolt from Texas to New Mexico is not the most straightforward thing in the world right now. The normal way you would go is through Abilene, but with the range on the Bolt and the fact that most of the chargers on that route are Tesla chargers, you'd kind of have to go around the panhandle through Oklahoma. But
so you can get there, it's just not the straightest route.
It's not the most straightforward route. But overall, it's, especially in big cities, there are plenty of chargers all over the place. And knowing that you're moving into a city with an EV that you know can't use a Tesla supercharger, you can look for places to live that have chargers close to them.
Long-term plans, there's not really a plan in place to replace this Bolt. There's not really a plan in place to replace the Model 3. There's kind of a plan in place to replace the Fiat 500e. That's an Aptera that we have a reservation on, but the Aptera doesn't exist, at least not yet. They're supposed to be going into production intent builds. We'll see. I mean, we've got some Aptera fans in the audience for sure, and we probably have some Aptera critics in the viewing audience as well. But we're holding out hope. We're in the hopeful group that the Aptera is going to get built, and we will get to go to San Diego, and our first video of that will be our road trip from San Diego back home. But the car has to get built first, and we're about 40,000th in line, so a lot of them have to get built first. So don't look for that video anytime soon. I just hope that the company can get it to us. But as far as replacing these other cars, for me, Ford or somebody like it is going to have to do an electrified Lightning version of the Maverick, or another company could do a truck that size. If something like that got announced, I'd be all over it. I'd be an early reservation holder. But right now, I'm very happy with the Model 3. I was very happy with the Bolt. We purchased the Model 3 and had it become my daily driver because we needed a car that could road trip faster. The prices on the Model 3s used through Hertz were impossible to ignore. It was like, if we're going to do this, this is the time to do it.
It was really almost like a once in a lifetime thing. Like there was a 2-week window when those prices were at their lowest, and that's when we bought. And
I like the technology in that car. I like the technology in this one fine too. Great backup camera and all of that, but I've gotten so accustomed to the technology in the Model 3 that it's definitely a huge difference. But we still love this car, and it's serving Dylan very well right now.
I just want to add to that pretty much what Dylan already said, that the learning curve on driving the Bolt is much shallower. It's much easier to learn to drive it if it's your first EV. Getting into the Tesla is like trying to learn how to fly the space shuttle. It takes a lot of understanding how to use it. It's not that hard. It's not that hard. Okay, some people find it easier than others. I found it very alien and kind of stressful, and going back and forth is a little weird to me. I like to learn how to drive a car and then not have to learn again the next day. But yeah, the Bolt is easier transition that way for most people.
It's because it's going to feel like the car, the internal combustion engine car that you traded in.
Yeah,
it's just going to feel that way. But when you step on the accelerator, if you step on it as hard as you stepped on the accelerator in your 4-cylinder internal combustion engine car, you're going to peel out.
You're going to go. Yeah.
So through this video, we got a couple of ideas for upcoming videos with the Bolt that we'll get working on right away. So be sure that you have subscribed to the channel so that you can be notified when those videos come out. Thank you for all of your questions. Please add any of your experiences or any further questions that you may have down in the comments. Thank you very much for watching.